In the heart of the Ural Mountains, deep in Russia, stands the village of Krasnaya Dolina, a place enveloped in eternal mists, where dry trees twist like thirsty hands. From the first hours of twilight, there's a feeling that something observed never truly steps into the world of the living. And it is in this gloomy setting that our true and disturbing account begins. It was an October night, and art teacher Elena, 34 years old, called Aunt Lena by the children, decided to document the ancient abandoned chapel atop the hill. Local stories spoke of a family found dead there decades ago, the entire step, witnessing the grotesque scene, bodies flayed as if death itself had sculpted them. Lena entered accompanied only by her antique camera, borrowed from her cousin Igor, who worked as a fresco restorer in St. Petersburg, and her trembling flashlight, which already showed an erratic reflection, as if another presence stood behind her. Initially, there was only silence, that screaming silence. The chapel walls, covered in strange symbols, had cracks that resembled wounds. There was the acrid smell of mold mixed with an undefined odor, like frozen meat. With each step, creaks echoed in the empty temple. The flashlight flickered, and once, Elena swore she saw the shadow of a child running between the pillars. But when she refocused, nothing. Breathing heavily, heart pounding, she continued. Until, turning a pillar, she found a small improvised altar made of broken bones and old photos. A family supposedly paid by fear. A father impaled. A mother brutally torn apart. Mutilated children. She filmed it. The frame trembled. And suddenly the atmosphere transformed. The temperature plummeted. The flashlight went out. The sound of footsteps, slow, insistent, came from behind. Elena stammered and called for Igor, but only her own voice echoed. She tried to turn the flashlight back on. The camera fell to the floor. When the light returned, she was alone. The altar had disappeared. In its place, only dust and the feeling of being watched. Elena ran out of the chapel, but felt the weight of something following her. In the visual shift she experienced, shadows seemed to project and advance on their own from behind the twisted trees. She didn't look back. She ran down the hill, scraping her knee. When she reached the village, breathless and disheveled, no one answered. All the houses seemed abandoned. The last house, half faded, was Igor's, but its window wasn't lit. She knocked furiously, no response, and the door creaked. It was unlocked. Lena entered and saw her cousin motionless, fallen, his head tucked into his chest. He held a drawing, his art, an altar made of human bones, almost exactly like what she had seen. On the edge, fresh crimson paint. Alone, Elena screamed. Igor didn't respond. She touched the man's arm, ice cold. She opened his hand. The paper crumbled between his fingers, revealing scratch marks, deep diagonals that seemed to celebrate each line. A deep sigh, then silence. She quickly packed a bag, set off on the road, but half a kilometer ahead she felt watched. In the rearview mirror, someone was on the bridge, arms raised, face covered in torn, dirt-stained clothes. It seemed to scream in silence. She floored it. The speed increased, but the screams changed. They began to echo inside her head, a chorus of childish, angry laments, saying, "Come back." The tourist van wouldn't start anymore. It seized air. It stopped. On its own. Desperate, she got out, locked the car, and when she looked back, there was only the empty road. At that point, Elena stayed for 6 hours, her eyes fixed, her thoughts swirling like hurricanes. Only when a truck driver passed by did she feel saved. Almost. He gave up on continuing more than 20 kilometers down. He said the full moon exposed the thick fog, with dancing figures on the side of the road. There was nothing he could do. He lived too far away. He took Lena to the local police station. At the police station, no record of the Chapel family's disappearance or Igor's. They simply ignored it. They gave her hot tea. They only looked at her photos and the video from the fallen camera. Torn pieces, too shaky to see. However, they recognized the primitive symbols inscribed on the chapel walls. Sacrificial runes, known among the Urals for their association. with bodily resurgence rituals, spells for bodies to return not as bodies but as walking nightmares. Until then, Elena was still alive. Months passed. Elena, now a recluse in a small apartment in the Kazan suburbs, tried to erase everything she had experienced from her memory. She had changed professions. Now she gave private sculpture lessons to young people in emotional recovery. But every night when she closed her eyes, she heard the heavy, muffled breathing she had felt on her back in that chapel. She couldn't sleep without the figure returning, sometimes in the form of a child, sometimes a hooded man with charcoal eyes dripping down the walls. One day she received a letter, no sender, written in dark, twisted ink. Just one sentence. "You saw. Now you need to remember." Inside there was a small rusted iron cross and a yellowed, childlike strand of hair tied with straw thread. Elena locked the letter in a drawer, but the next day the cross was on her bed. She began to doubt her own sanity. She tried to contact acquaintances in the village. No one answered. Igor's number went straight to voicemail. She decided, despite her fear, to return to Krasnaya Dolina to understand what was happening. The road was covered in fog and mud, and as she approached, the GPS failed. Upon arrival, the village was completely changed. Houses torn down, dead trees, no birds. But the most bizarre thing, there were children everywhere, standing, motionless, staring fixedly at anyone who passed, all dirty with opaque eyes and mouths stitched with black thread. Elena thought about turning back, but something called her. Not a voice. It was more like a weight in the air. The children followed her without walking. They just appeared, at the corners of the road, between the cracks in the houses, peeking through the windows. Upon reaching the chapel, or what was left of it, she found a crater, as if something had exploded from within. In the center, a new altar had appeared, with a mirror covered by a stained sheet. It was as if something beneath the earth was breathing. She didn't approach, but suddenly she heard a lament coming from inside the ground, a cry, a child's voice whispering her name. "Lena, you left me here." When she approached, the mirror revealed itself. It showed her own image. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, a deformed child watched her, with the same features as young Igor, but with eyes dark as abysses and cracked skin like dry mud. The reflection blinked. Elena turned quickly. Nothing. She fell to her knees and cried. There, she understood. Whatever had been awakened had clung to her. It didn't just follow her. It used her as a conductor. It wasn't just a spirit. It was an ancient fragment, a forgotten entity, hiding behind legends. Something born with the earth, never human, but learned to use humans to continue existing. As she left the chapel, she saw her own van parked at the village entrance, but she hadn't driven it there. Inside, she found Igor's body, with stitched skin and his mouth open in an eternal scream. There was a note written in dry blood on his chest. "You returned. Now we are complete." The body crumbled before her, as if made of dry leaves. And she fainted. When she woke up, she was lying on the front seat with the van keys beside her. The village had vanished. She was in the middle of an empty field, no trace of houses, people, or roads. Only grass and the sound of wind blowing distant words. "Don't forget. Don't close your eyes." She was never seen again. The van was found empty, kilometers from the nearest town. Elena's diary, with pencil-written entries, spoke of earth echoes, spectral children, and nameless entities that fed on memory. The last sentence written was, "Art can record beauty, but it also traps terror. I recorded it." Now, a request from the depths of the abyss, but with affection. If this story sent shivers down your spine, subscribe to the channel, not out of obligation, but because it shows me you're with me on this journey of dark tales and real nightmares. And look, I want to know what you would do if you were in Elena's shoes. Would you go back to the village? Write in the comments with details. Describe your escape, your strategy, or your surrender, as if it were a new ending. It can be terrifying, heroic, or completely insane. Surprise me. It'll be amazing to build this universe with you. 2 weeks after Elena's disappearance, her name appeared on a waiting list at a psychiatric clinic in Zurich. A false name, but with matching details. One of the doctors, Dr. Varon, intrigued, decided to investigate. The file stated that the patient reported experiences with living mirrors and reversed children, an expression he had never heard before. Varon traveled to the region near where Elena was last seen. He found shepherds, nomadic residents, and hunters from the area. One of them, a slow-speaking man named Miroslav, told him something that pierced his soul. "You're looking for her?" "She was swallowed, doctor. There are places here that swallow people and don't even spit out bones." When Varon insisted, Miroslav led him to a field with dry, cracked soil where a single twisted tree grew. This was the village, time erased, what the earth no longer wanted to remember. But the next night, reviewing the anonymous patient's files, Varon discovered something horrifying. Her face appeared in several old photos from the clinic's own archives, with dates ranging from 1953 to 2023. Always the same face, with small variations. Always hospitalized in different parts of Europe, with different names, but the same physiognomy, the same gaze. He decided to retrieve the physical files. Upon reaching the clinic's basement, he smelled damp earth. Something seemed wrong. The files were moldy but intact, and there was more. Other patients with similar reports, all having visited disappeared villages, regions of absolute silence, and then developing similar symptoms. Insomnia, hallucinations, time loss, and most disturbing, all stopped recognizing themselves in the mirror. One of them, before disappearing, wrote on the glass with his own blood, "This is not my reflection." Varon connected the dots and created a dossier called Project Zerkalo, Russian word for mirror, trying to alert his colleagues. But he was discredited, dismissed, and a few months later, found dead in his home, drowned in the bathtub with his eyes open, as if watching something beyond the ceiling. But not all was lost. A young journalist from Kazakhstan named Adil found the dossier in the abandoned clinic's archives after a fire. She was investigating unexplained disappearances of young digital influencers who claimed to have gone to hidden villages on the map to create content. What she found in Varon's material chilled her. Screenshots of messages in closed forums, deleted internet photos, videos riddled with interference, with flashes of children smiling in the background, always in the same pattern, black eyes and broken teeth. Adil decided to go to the region. Her last video published on her channel was enigmatic. She spoke in a tense voice. "If you are seeing this, it means I have arrived. The village exists, the cross is real, and someone is waiting." For me, the video was only 3 minutes long. At the end, the screen went black and a whisper could be heard. She opened the mirror. After that, the channel was deleted. But copies began to circulate. Theories exploded on the internet. Groups and forums began to form. One of them called themselves the Children of the Reflection. They claimed that the world was a shell and the true human beings were on the other side, and that in certain places in the world, like Krasnaya Dolina, the veils between the sides were thinner. The village, they said, was one of the points where the membrane between worlds had been punctured. Disturbing videos began to emerge. People placing mirrors in deserted fields and filming reflections that didn't match the environment. Some people claimed to have seen their reflections move on their own. Others disappeared during filming. One channel even managed to capture something that appears to be a child crawling out of a mirror, with piercing noises and completely white eyes. This movement caused panic. Platforms began banning videos and taking down channels. But whenever a video was deleted, another appeared, always with the same title. "You saw, now you need to remember." And now, a quick break from the terror for a connection between us. If you've made it this far, take a deep breath. I know, it's heavy, but these stories need to be told. So if this captivated you, sent shivers down your spine, or messed with your head? Help me keep this ritual alive. Subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss the continuation of this journey. And answer in the comments. If you found an old abandoned mirror in a field, would you look into it? Or would you break it right there? Tell me, but tell me in your own way. I want to read your darkest thoughts on this. In the heart of the forest, where sunlight barely touches the ground, a clandestine group formed by members of the Children of the Reflection prepared their darkest ritual. Guided by ancient manuscripts found in the village ruins, they believed that the membrane between worlds could be torn to bring forth the true human being. This would require a sacrifice, and not just any sacrifice, but the surrender of the soul of someone who had already been touched by the mirror. Adil, the journalist who dared to confront the mystery, became the focus of the group's attention. Her last posted video was not just a warning, it was a call for the ritual to begin. The forest around the vanished village filled with shadows that whispered in forgotten tongues, and a circle of black stones was traced in a clearing where an altar of human bones had been improvised. Among the group members was a strange man, with skin pale as the moon, whom everyone simply called the Guardian. He seemed to control the energy of the place. His eyes glowed with an unusual hue, and his hands trembled slightly, as if absorbing the very darkness of the place. It was believed that he was a kind of mediator between our world and the other side of the mirror. The ritual began under a starless sky, cut by a cold, biting wind. The Guardian's grave voice echoed, pronouncing words no one else understood. Adil, tied to the altar, felt the weight of madness approaching. The ancient mirror was placed before her. Its black surface seemed to suck in the light, and shadows danced restlessly within it. Suddenly, the mirror emitted a deep vibration, a sound that seemed to come from deep within the earth. The air grew dense, almost impossible to breathe, and the figure of a child began to emerge from the glass. Its body was transparent, a mixture of mist and bones, and its eyes, completely black, fixed on Adil with an indescribable hunger. The girl whispered words that froze the blood of those present, promising that the dead would rise and the living would be devoured. A scream cut through the night. One of the group members, overcome by fear, tried to flee, but his shadow detached from his body and began to pursue him, dragging him into the forest. He disappeared among the twisted branches, and his body was never found. At the height of the chaos, the Guardian approached the mirror, touched its surface with the palm of his hand, and, with a sudden movement, the child's image expanded, breaking the glass and casting a dark mist over the clearing. People fell to the ground, suffocating and screaming, as if possessed by an invisible force. Adil, even tied, felt herself being pulled into the mirror. Her mind fought against the darkness, and for an instant, she saw flashes of other people, lost faces, lifeless eyes, all trapped in the opposite dimension. She tried to scream, but there was no sound. It was as if her body disappeared, her being slowly consumed by the reflection. The ritual ended in silence. The clearing was empty, except for the mirror, which lay on the ground, now with a fissure that glowed with a sinister internal light. The Children of the Reflection group disbanded, spreading throughout the world with the mission to find more mirrors, more breaking points, to spread terror and madness. Days later, a rescue team found the site. The mirror, however, had disappeared, as had any trace of the group members. Only deep claw marks were etched into the surrounding stones. The village of Krasnaya Dolina continued to be a point of mystery and terror, an invisible blot on the map where time and reality seemed distorted. And somewhere, among the broken reflections of the world, Adil still struggled to escape her own reflection, a soul trapped between worlds, condemned to witness eternal horror. Adil's disappearance became an urban legend among the residents of the forest surrounding area. No one ever spoke directly about what happened in the clearing, but stories of screams at night and shadows moving beyond the field of vision were common. Those who dared to approach the area swore they heard whispers laden with pain and madness, as if the very air was contaminated by an evil presence. Years later, a young man named Victor fascinated by urban legends and unsolved mysteries, decided to mount an expedition to find traces of what remained of the Children of the Reflection. Victor was a paranormal researcher, but he had never faced anything so profound and disturbing. Equipped with thermal cameras, recorders, and a diary for notes, he entered the forbidden forest. As night fell, the atmosphere became suffocating. The trees seemed to close off the path, and a dense fog covered the ground, rising like icy fingers. Victor felt an intense shiver, as if he were being watched. When he reached the clearing, he found a stone covered with strange symbols and a fragment of the broken mirror radiating a faint, almost hypnotic light. Determined to discover the truth, he tried to capture images of the clearing, but the camera mysteriously failed, showing only static. A low sound, like distant crying, began to grow around him. Victor then realized that the shadows around him were not merely the absence of light, but entities that moved of their own accord, lurking, waiting. Suddenly, the mist condensed into the form of a female figure, translucent and with deep black eyes. It was Adele. Her face expressed a mixture of sadness, despair, and urgency. She tried to communicate something, but her words came out as distorted, incomprehensible echoes. Victor felt an overwhelming pressure in his chest, as if he were being pulled into that dark world. The figure then pointed to the mirror fragment. Victor, with a trembling hand, touched the glass, and a wave of images flooded his mind. Visions of the Children of the Reflection victims, their last moments of terror, their souls trapped and crying out for liberation. The instant he tried to pull away, he felt something grab his ankle. He looked down and saw a dark shadow engulfing his leg, pulling him to the ground. He struggled desperately, but the force was uncontrollable. A final gasp of cold air passed his lips before he disappeared into the darkness of the forest, becoming another lost soul among the broken reflections. Days later, his team found the abandoned equipment at the forest entrance. Among his belongings, Victor's diary contained only one sentence written in a trembling hand. "They are here, among the reflections. Do not trust what you see." The village of Krasnaya Dolina remains deserted, a forgotten place where time seems to bend upon itself, where the Black Mirror waits silently, thirsty for more victims. Residents of neighboring towns avoid the area at all costs, for they know that looking into a mirror can not only show what is, but also what should never be seen. This is a story about the thin line between reality and the abyss, where curiosity becomes the door to one's personal hell. And if you think twice before facing your reflection tonight, perhaps you've learned something important. There are things that remain hidden for a reason, because looking too much can cost you your very soul. Before concluding, if you're following this journey through shadows and inexplicable terrors, how about subscribing to the channel? Here, every story is an invitation to explore the darkest corners of the human mind, and of course, to share the fear, the adrenaline, and the mystery together. Leave a comment below what scares you most about this story. Was it the macabre ritual, Adele's figure, or that feeling that the mirror might be closer than we imagine? We want to know what part made you think twice before facing your reflection. And if you have a real story or a nightmare that left its mark on you, tell the community. Let's create a space where fear becomes connection, and the voices of those who have lived the inexplicable can be heard. Thank you so much for being here until the end. Your support keeps this work alive, a space where terror becomes more than stories, it becomes an experience. So, until the next story, and be careful what your reflection might be hiding.